dear friends. I'm delighted to join you for the 10th anniversary of the Munich Cybersecurity Conference. Let me start on a personal note. Last year, I had a fire chat with Ralph Wintergerst on the big picture. And now I'm having a speech. I don't know if this is a promotion or a demotion. I like to think of it as a promotion. Still, looking back at these 10 years, how many things have changed, not only for the Munich Cybersecurity Conference, but also for the sector itself? So here is what I see as the main changes that come to my mind when I look back at the evolution of the sector over these last years. What has actually changed in this period of time? First, the sophistication of cyber attacks, which have become increasingly difficult to detect and identify. Then, something also important, the proliferation of ransomware, which is now our top cyber threat against individuals, businesses, and critical infrastructures. No later than this week, the Romanian healthcare sector was hit by a massive wave of ransomware attacks targeting at least 18 hospitals. More change. The range of our critical infrastructures that have become prime targets for malicious cyber actors, especially in the key areas of transport, energy, and health. The cost of cybercrime has now reached unprecedented level. It has skyrocketed. In 2022, we calculated around 8.4 trillion US dollars. Now, by 2027, it's forecast to triple, to jump at 23 trillion. If this was measured as a country economy, this would be the equivalent of the third largest economy in the world after the US and China. That's what we're talking about. And linked to this, of course, is a cyber risk surface that has significantly expanded, and it's predicted, forecasted reasonably to expand even more, which is the proliferation of the Internet of Things devices in our daily lives. Fellow citizens will have to function their daily lives, their appliances, their houses, their cars, their businesses, and their administrations in this new environment. And on top of that, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine simply further illustrates the shift of cyber being now, among all the other things, also a battleground for modern conflict. So against this background, let me now switch to what we have been doing to face these unprecedented challenges. We, institutions, policymakers, regulators, in the face of these risks, we have significantly strengthened our legislative framework, and we have been consistently creating operational tools to better protect ourselves and society against these new risks. Every year, when I come to this conference in Munich, I always tell you about our upcoming proposals on cybersecurity. This is one of the leitmotifs of my presence here. Today, 4 years since I first came to speak for the Commission in this conference, I can tell you that these proposals are now becoming a tangible legislative reality. And they are already producing an impact both within the European Union and beyond. First, in terms of resilience. The revised directive on the security of network and information systems, universally known as NIS2, has now been in force for over a year. It has been adopted in record time, and member states are already working on the transposition at national level. And we expect it to be fully effective by October this year. We have also made great strides with a landmark political agreement on the Cyber Resilience Act, the very first EU-wide legislation establishing horizontal cybersecurity requirements for connected products. This is a piece of legislation that will protect European citizens in their everyday lives, but would also add an advantage to our industry because they would be able to provide safe and secure products. And I'm also very pleased and delighted that our US colleagues, allies, and friends are joining us today, that we are not alone in this effort to ensure the cybersecurity of connected products, with the US Cyber Trust Mark following along our footsteps, and this convergence of use, which we have further developed with the signing of the joint Cyber Safe Products Action Plan only 2 weeks ago. All this shows that there is a broader global convergence. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Nürnberg, who is with us today, for the US crucial cooperation in all dimensions of cybersecurity. The Cyber Resilience Act will complement the Cybersecurity Act, which introduced mechanisms to develop voluntary European cybersecurity certification requirements and frameworks for ICT products, services, and processes. And here too, we have delivered, adopting on the 31st of January this year, the first common EU-wide cybersecurity certification scheme, a groundbreaking certification scheme that will further promote trust in cybersecurity in our internal market. All this is now an emerging reality on the resilience side, but there is more. What I would like to talk to you about, something that I mentioned last year, is that we are also delivering on the Cyber Solidarity Act. This is a proposal which is a concrete response to the sharp rise of cyber threats since the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This is the result of the lessons learned in Ukraine. In the current geopolitical context, in this world around us, which is becoming darker, more unsafe, and more insecure, the European Union is emerging as an anchor of stability and as a force of good. We believe that we must step out our collective efforts to boost the detection, preparedness, and response to the attacks that our enemies are systematically engaging against us and our allies. Tools such as cross-border security operation centers, SOCs, or the EU Cybersecurity Reserve, I believe will be game changers for cyber threat detection in the EU and incident response. With these proposals, we are providing the European Union with robust operational capabilities, not legislation or regulation, operational capabilities to better detect cyber threats, to better mobilize state-of-the-art technology, and to respond quickly and operationally with the help of trusted private sector providers, whom I would like to call the good rangers, ready to help for the good cause. I'm confident that now, on this is the last missing part on our regulatory architecture. I think I'm very confident and very encouraged by our discussions with the European Parliament, our member states, that we will be able to have this agreement by the second quarter of this year. Let me now move to the question that this year's edition asks: where to from now? What I can answer to that question is that, of course, we have delivered on a spectacular amount of accomplishments, of success stories, but as Ralph also said, we cannot afford to rest on our laurels. We must remain constantly vigilant to changes and disruptions in cyberspace. And more broadly, we have to be aware that the current geopolitical landscape does not allow us to take a relaxed attitude against the threats we're facing as Europeans. Let's take, for instance, the example of artificial intelligence, which you will be discussing later, its interplay with cybersecurity. We all know the potential that AI offers for malicious actors. We know the potential to massify and automate attacks, and we must be able to adapt our protection, our defense against this new modus operandi. But we also need to look into how to master AI tools to enhance cybersecurity. For instance, to improve our capabilities for threat detection, identification, and even prediction. We must also be extremely vigilant about the use of digital means for the spread of illegal content online. Violent extremist and terrorist content circulating online is ever increasing, especially after the terrorist attack by Hamas on the state of Israel on the 7th of October. We do have a first step, the terrorist content online regulation, which offers us a robust tool to prevent such content to be spread online. This is already available. And since its entry into application, this tool has already produced about 400 removal orders of terrorist content that have been hosted by competent authorities. This is a first important step. We also need to keep a close eye, especially as we approach the European elections on the 9th of June. As you probably know, the European election is the second most numerous electoral process on the planet after the Indian election. We need to keep a very close eye on foreign information manipulation and interference. This is about our democracy, about our values, about our way of life, what we represent as Europeans in today's world. Russia's strategic and coordinated use of foreign information manipulation and interference in the phase before its aggression of Ukraine poses a clear threat to our own security. It endangers the functioning of our society and that challenges directly our democratic ethos. When half of the global population is heading to election this year, US, EU, many of our member states, we cannot simply afford, as defenders of free societies, of free citizens and free people, that foreign malign actors manipulate the opinions of our citizens and plant the seeds of division and hate at the heart of our democracies. Let me conclude these remarks, dear friends, but saying, or rather asking, that who could have predicted 10 years ago that cybersecurity would have taken such a prominent place in international security. If there is one certainty of these 10 years, is that what you probably thought at the time that was an industry concern, now it's a major societal and security concern. It's something that matters to you and to us. Cybersecurity is now the priority of priorities within the set of security policies. And the main issue at stake is double: cooperation and trust. I mentioned earlier the importance of working together with allies, the United States, which is now producing concrete results. This dialogue of like-minded forces must continue, be strengthened to provide a stronger and even more sustained response to this threat landscape. The same goes for NATO. Both the EU and NATO are now moving towards jointly determining challenges that we can solve against jointly and aligning our operational plans accordingly. We're also working on how to promote synergies and complementarity with NATO across organizational or national boundaries. We have to avoid duplication of tasks and instruments and promote a communality and sharpness of responses. We are, for instance, working on the harmonization of training needs with NATO, developing joint curricula, courses, exercises with NATO structures. All this will help us to provide a coherent training to respective cyber defense personnel. And finally, we can make it work on the regulation, we can make it work on cyber defense, we can make it work on standards, we can instill trust, we can have cooperation, but all this will never work unless something else happens. And this is people. We need to bridge the endemic shortage of cybersecurity skills in Europe and beyond. This is a problem. This is a problem that applies to big and small actors, east and west, north and south, left and right. And you know, many of you know of my personal commitment to this issue of cybersecurity skills. 2 years ago, on the 2022 edition of the Munich Cybersecurity Conference, I called on you all to join forces to train professionals on cyber skills. And today, this need of training cybersecurity professionals is still very much there. And I'm sorry to break the news that the gap is still widening. But we're trying. We now have, at the European level, an unprecedented financial envelope of 65 billion euros, which will be developed for upskilling and reskilling in the European economy. This is a colossal amount of resources that will be deployed to help. We are also proposed the so-called EU Cybersecurity Skills Academy, which is a one-stop shop that aligns possibilities, trainings, resources, funding, and allows you to do meaningful pledges for training on cybersecurity. And there is a third strand, which is perfectly feasible, but politically more complicated, but I personally believe it's necessary, that we will be needing in Europe a system of organized mobility of third country nationals that would be invited to work in key areas of our economy, like cybersecurity, where we need them. But this will have to be done in an orderly way, regulated, with papers, not through illegal channels, not through back doors, not through the smugglers. And we have already now proposed a major initiative of an EU talent pool that would allow us precisely to do that, to bridge the skills gap. So, dear friends, a lot have been done. I would say that never before in the history of the European Commission we had such a productive period of political time than the last 5 years. I think that we should be collectively proud for this. I remember from last year your concerns about regulation. I am also a fan of non-regulation, but the European way of life in cybersecurity and digital governance requires a European model of regulation that has to be intelligent, proportionate, and targeted. Everything else would be suicidal for our economy and for our industry. And I don't believe that when we discuss legislation, we have to go through a binary approach, either full legislation or no legislation at all. There is a way, and this is called the European way. Thank you.